All right, Braves fans, let's get rolling. I'm George McNair, and this is State of the Braves. Well, guys, since the last time I came to you, Austin Riley has gone down with what might be a season-ending injury. Very likely it is at least a regular season-ending injury. I mean, what do you say? I mean, this team is just like uh, so many big-time Braves have gone down this year. I know it has been a really tough season in so many ways, and Riley going down just feels like, I mean, you can't even call it a gut punch anymore. I mean, it's a below the belt. It's I don't know. This season has been really hard to get through. There does seem to be maybe a little bit of good stuff happening with this team since Riley has gone down. So we'll talk about that this episode. We'll talk about the impact that the Riley injury will have on the team going forward. But when he went down, and I look at the Braves lineup now, it's almost like, do you remember the movie The Replacements? It was Keanu Reeves football movie, and just a ragtag group of guys. I mean, I almost feel like that's the Braves team now. It's like, who are half of these guys? That's just how I feel. But the temptation is to ask when Riley goes down, it's like, is this team just doomed? Is this team just cursed? And certainly having those thoughts, I mean, it's a very real thing. And I don't think it can be argued that the Braves have had more impact injuries to their lineup than any team in baseball. I mean, maybe I'm unaware of another team out there, but it doesn't seem possible. Certainly teams are all experiencing injuries, some to the pitching staff, but specifically to this lineup, it's just really gutted the lineup. And still to this point, even though Soler has now come back and gotten back into the lineup without Ozzy out, with Ozzy out and with Riley out, and of course Acuna, it just I mean, those are three cornerstone top of the lineup guys that you're missing. And so the patchwork job that Anthopoulos and Snicker are trying to do, I mean, it's all you can do at this point. But yeah, the temptation to ask, is this team doomed? I mean, I certainly understand that feeling. And fans can despair. Fans can ask that question. But certainly the team cannot, right? The team has to keep going. And so far, the good news is that the team has responded pretty well since Riley went down. They took 2 out of 3 from the Phillies in a really, really important home series against them. The Phillies, by the way, not playing super great right now. And then the Braves last night when they squeak it out against the Nationals. And, these games, these 4 games, I think, give us very much a glimpse into the style of play that the Braves are going to have to play moving forward if they want to be successful. It's probably going to be a lot of close games. It's going to be games where the Braves have to do the little things well, or at least better than their opponent to win games. The very good news of that is the Braves have some really good starting pitching in line now. So great starting pitching, no mistakes, or at least fewer mistakes than the opponent, and then some timely hits. I mean, that's what it's going to take for this team to be successful moving forward. So, the impact of the Riley loss is very real. I mean, we cannot gloss over that at all. He has been, even though he got off to a horrendous start to begin the season, his first 2 months were certainly very forgettable, but his last 2 months have been great. Since mid-June, Riley was a top 20 player in all of Major League Baseball in terms of position players, and that's basically what he has been the last 3 seasons before 2024. So he kind of got back in line to who he was in those last 2 months. He was 17th in WAR among position players, 16th in slugging percentage, 12th in home runs. That's Austin Riley. So he had gotten back to that. So even though his yearly numbers aren't as impressive as they typically are, he might have finished on a big tear too, and gotten to 30 plus home runs and that sort of thing. So of course that's not going to happen now. He was also playing arguably Gold Glove caliber third base. I don't know if he would have won it or not. That award is always a little funny, and who gets those awards. But nonetheless, Riley's defense was super solid, and of course the impact of Riley, on the field and in the clubhouse. Of course, he's still on the bench and he's still a factor, but it's different when you're playing, right? So just the psyche of the team that, oh man, we lost another big piece. It has to be. It has to be tough. But again, one of the silver linings here is it seems like in the early going, at least, that the Braves, they're not defeated mentally, and they're not dwelling on the negative, and they've bounced back pretty good in these first 4 games without Riley. So when Riley went down, of course, the Braves had to pivot pretty quickly. And the truth was, internally, they just didn't have many good options. If Nacho Alvarez had not, come up earlier and just really looked a little overmatched offensively, maybe they try to bring him up at some point, but he also is battling pneumonia. I mean, it's just another thing, right? It's like, how are you battling pneumonia in August? But just another thing. And so the Braves look outside the organization and they signed Gio Urshela. The first few games of his Braves career, the results have been pretty encouraging, right? For Urshela, he's not going to mash a bunch of home runs. But let's get to know him a little bit more. He missed about a month earlier in the season with a hamstring injury, so his yearly numbers and maybe some of his offensive performance were affected by that. I mean, Braves fans can certainly, at this point in this season, know full well how, if you take a guy out of the lineup for even just like a 2-week injury, it can take a while to get him back, to full strength and hitting well. So maybe that was part of Urshela's downturn this year. For his career, Urshela has been a fringe starting caliber player. I would kind of put him in the Arcia category, right? At his best, and maybe a little better than that. At his best, he's been a solid starter. So since becoming a full-time player in 2019, Urshela has had 2 seasons over 2 WAR. And the 2 WAR mark is kind of, if you can get to that point, you're at least a starting caliber player. So in 2019, he had a 3.1 WAR season, according to Fangraphs. That was with the Yankees, by far his best season of his career. He hit over 20 home runs in that season. Of course, the short porch in Yankee Stadium, maybe that had to part to play, but he's never really been that kind of power hitter since. In 2022, he had a 2.6 WAR season with the Twins. But since then, he's been pretty disappointing. He had a 0.5 WAR season with the Angels last year, and then a negative 0.2 WAR season, just basically doing nothing with the Tigers this year. And of course, that's why they let him go in mid-August. And the timing was good for the Braves. They needed to turn to somebody else outside the organization, and so Urshela was there for them. So offensively, he's definitely a contact over power guy. He holds a 273 career batting average, 318 career on base percentage, which isn't terrible, but only a 412 slugging percentage. So again, you're not getting a ton of pop with Urshela. He might hit you some doubles. He's not going to hit you many home runs. But again, a guy who puts the ball in play a little more, maybe gets a few more hits than than some of the Braves certainly are doing this year. Maybe that's a positive thing at the bottom of the lineup. So all of those numbers, his career numbers, are significantly down this year. But the positive side of me, the positive side of me says the Braves do have a pretty good record of bringing guys in who are having down years, and they kind of fix 1 or 2 things, and the guy exceeds those marks moving forward. Of course, Jorge Soler is just one of those many examples of that in 2021. So maybe Urshela can be that as well for the Braves. What we have already seen in his first 4 games, he is a very good fielder. He might be, hate to say it, but he might actually be better than Riley over there at third, just by a hair. He's a little quicker, really good hands. So that's good. He's flashed some really nice plays already, and especially turning some really quick double plays. You might remember the double play they were able to turn on Trey Turner in the Phillies series. And they also had a really nice double play in this game against the Nationals that was really important as well. So he's made some really nice plays. And look, if he's playing like Gold Glove level third base, and he's decent and just a few key hits here and there at the bottom of the order, okay, I think. Would you like to bring in another big time hitting third baseman? Yeah, but it's just not realistic at this time of the year. So Urshela is probably as good as they could have done, and maybe he can. Maybe he can have something in these last 6 weeks of the season and help the Braves get into the playoffs. Thus far, Urshela is 4 for 14 with the Braves with 2 doubles, and he's added a walk and an RBI in that short amount of time. So he's gotten on base some. He's had some good hits. If Urshela hits enough or I'm sorry, if he does not hit enough to where he's becoming a negative drain on the offense, then I think you might see the Braves shift away, even though he has great defense. But as long as he's contributing some offensively, not just striking out and hitting into double plays, then I think he's going to be in there. His defense has actually been pretty game-changing in these close games so far in his early tenure with the Braves. If he doesn't perform, if the Braves have to take him out of the lineup, I think that would probably happen when Ozzie returns, and then you have the choice between Whit Merrifield and Urshela internally. And Whit Merrifield's been pretty good. So I do want to take a minute to talk about him as well. Like I said, these ragtag replacements, they're honestly playing pretty well right now, and they're going to have to continue to do that over the last 6 weeks of the season. So in terms of Merrifield, the Braves pick him up from the Phillies. The Phillies dropped him. He was only hitting 199 with the Phillies, though I think the Phillies did a disservice to Merrifield. They got him as kind of like a part-time utility guy, and Merrifield can play infield and outfield, but he's always been a full-time player in the bigs. He's a 3-time All-Star. And he's 35, so his best seasons might be behind him, but he had never really done the part-time thing and certainly was not performing at his standard level this year with the Phillies. So they drop him, the Braves pick him up, and I mean, with Ozzie going down and Nacho not really proven it yet, Merrifield has this shot. So he's going to be able to play some, at least until Ozzie gets back. So he's going to be really important as well. And again, if Urshela falls off, maybe Merrifield becomes even that much more important to the Braves' success. So, he's shown his strengths already. He's played a solid defensive second base. He's an excellent contact guy. He brings some speed to this team, which could desperately use a little speed on the base paths. And he is certainly a smart baseball player, smart on the bases. So I've always liked Merrifield. There was a couple years ago he was available, and I thought the Braves might want to pick him up, and they didn't. But yeah, he's here now, and I think it's really a sneaky great addition that Anthopoulos made to get him. So in his last 22 games, or his 22 games with the Braves, Merrifield's hitting .257, which, in and of itself isn't remarkable, but certainly better than his 199 that he was hitting with the Phillies. But the really good thing is a .370 on base percentage with the Braves, and then add 5 stolen bases to that. And he's put together some really good at bats. I just really like what he's bringing to the table right now. And let's be honest, Ozzie was not having a great offensive year. So Merrifield coming in and getting on base a little more and stealing some bases, he's certainly at least held down the fort in the games that he's been playing with the Braves. He's not going to provide you a ton of power, right? He's kind of the total opposite player from Ozzie in that way. But he's the other thing I really like about bringing in Merrifield, he's a proud major leaguer. He's a 3-time All-Star. He gets released by the Phillies, and certainly he has to have, if not a chip on his shoulder, he does have to be motivated to go out and take this opportunity and, prove that he still got it. And so I like that he's motivated like that. And, we'll see what happens moving forward, but Merrifield's going to have some big at bats and have a chance for some big moments. Even if Riley's able to come back for the playoffs, I think Merrifield is going to be in a position in this, hopefully, push to the playoffs to have some big at bats and hopefully some big hits. All right, so without Riley, how good can this lineup be? Well, getting Soler back last night was really important. obviously it brings some more on base and some more power to the top of the lineup. It makes the lineup, at least I feel like, more presentable. But without Ozzie, it's still very top heavy. I mean, you're noticing after Olsen at 4, you got Laureano hitting 5th last night against a lefty. Now Laureano, I talked about him last episode. He's been awesome and has played at such a different level since he's been with the Braves as well. So I don't mind hitting him 5th, but you'd love to be able to slide him down to 6th and hit Ozzie 5th when Ozzie comes back. So I think it's kind of obvious, but when Ozzie returns, the Braves are at least going to be at full strength of this version of their team, right? For the 2024 Braves, Ozzie returning and, knock on wood, no one else going down with injury, you'll have at least your full strength team. And hopefully Ozzie can come back and hit a little better than he was earlier in this season. I am surprised last night that Harris led off and Soler was hitting second. But Harris hit a leadoff home run against the lefty, so what do I know? But I kind of would prefer Soler hitting first because he's higher on base, and I think he's a little more comfortable hitting first, and maybe hit Harris second moving forward. But we'll obviously just have to see what Snitker does there. All right, so can the Braves still make the playoffs without Austin Riley? I mean, absolutely they can. It's obviously harder, but it's going to have to be a very different equation for this team moving forward. In some ways, maybe it clarifies to this team that it's not that obviously you continue to try to hit the ball hard and hopefully they hit as many home runs as possible, but it almost like it clarifies for the whole team. We have to shift how we're doing things, how we're scoring runs. They used to be able to slug and just honestly get away with not doing the little things well. Not that they didn't do all the little things well, but when they didn't do them well, they could still kind of get away with it, right? It didn't hurt them as much because the next inning you could hit a 3-run homer and it just glossed over whatever failure you had in the previous inning. But this team is not going to be that way. Not getting a runner home from third with less than 2 outs, base running blunders, committing errors or just mental mistakes in the field, all of those things, you just can't do them with this iteration of the Braves team. So, the number one thing they have to do moving forward is play clean baseball. They have to do the little things better than their opponent. They did that last night. It wasn't perfect, but they did it. It's kind of like tennis, right? Sometimes you don't have to win the point. You just have to play with no mistakes and let your opponent lose the point, make an error. And that's certainly what happened last night. Yes, I mean, CJ Abrams' error was a gift for the Braves last night, but they played a pretty clean game outside of that inning where they had second and third, nobody out, and couldn't get the run in. That obviously hurt them and could have cost them the game. But very fortunately, no more mistakes the rest of the way, clean game the rest of the way, and then the Nationals make the big mistake with the C.J. Abrams error in the 10th inning. Yeah, we would have been able to save going into extra innings if we could just do a little more offensively. And again, against better teams, you probably lose that game with not getting that runner in from third. So you got to start doing that a little more consistently. The next thing that's really going to carry this team into the playoffs if they make it is the strength of the rotation. And this is the best news for the Braves. This is the most obvious strength for the Braves moving forward is their starting 5. With Fried's last start, he bounces back after his IL stint. He had some not so great outings. He bounces back in his last start against the Phillies, 7 innings pitched, 2 earned runs. And the Phillies were a team that he had historically struggled against. So it really looks like he's rounding back into form. Of course, the game before that, Ronaldo Lopez returns from the IL. Incredibly impressively, 5 innings, 10 strikeout performance. I kind of worried about that start coming back, first start back from the IL against a really good Phillies team, but he dominated them, especially Harper and Schwarber, struck both of those guys out 3 times apiece. So with Lopez seemingly full strength, with Fried seemingly full strength, and Charlie Morton bouncing back, 2 really good starts from him after looking really bad for a few starts before that. It really seems like the rotation is rounding back into form. You have all 5 guys, hopefully, the Braves are done with any kind of spot starts, and obviously, hopefully this starting five just stays healthy. So, unlike pretty much every other uh, team in baseball, in late August, the Braves have a healthy starting five. And again, I'm knocking on wood really a lot by saying that, but they have a five deep rotation that is anchored by the National League Cy Young favorite in Chris Sale. And last night, Chris Sale continued to, he just continues to post every start. Last night, 7 innings pitched, 2 earned runs, only 4 strikeouts, which was a little different. He's pitching against a young Nationals team. He didn't know a lot of those players, never pitched against them. So it's a little bit of a different feel when you have that and not a lot of big power hitters that you can strike out. But nonetheless, he gets through 7, allowing 2 runs, doesn't get the win, but just another great start from Chris Sale, anchoring this rotation. And of course, what can you say about Spencer Schwellenbach? I'm not going to be able to dive too deeply into him today, but man, he has been the surprise of the season. And if not for these pitchers, I mean, let's just be honest, this pitching staff is the reason the Braves are in the position they're in. And Schwellenbach is a big reason for that. And hopefully he can just keep going down the stretch as well. So, look, this entire season has been really about the pitching being great and the offense struggling. And so now here we are, 6 weeks to go. The offense just has to figure out a way to score 4+ runs a game. If you're averaging 4+ runs a game the rest of the way with this pitching staff, I think the Braves play winning baseball at least enough to get into the playoffs. And as the starters go deeper, I mean, this is another benefit. As the starters go deeper and you have fewer of these early exit blow-up starts from the spot starters, the more rested the bullpen is, the better the bullpen is going to perform, and that's really started to hold true as well. And that has been led by Raisel Iglesias. So I do want to spend a minute just talking about Raisel and the connection between the starting staff and the bullpen. But man, Raisel Iglesias has been, I think, sneaky dominant. I mean, we should talk about him more and what he's been doing. He deserves a ton of praise. He was good before the All-Star break, but he has been absolutely dominant after the break. Travis d'Arnaud did a more local radio interview in Atlanta that I was able to catch this past week. He talked about Iglesias a little bit, and basically he was saying that last year, I mean, Iglesias has always had this wipeout changeup as his best pitch, but this year all of his 4 pitches have been working, and it's pretty rare for a closer to have 4 really good pitches, and Iglesias certainly has that. And that d'Arnaud gave that interview right before the Phillies series, and then you saw Iglesias in that last game of the Phillies series just wipe out 3 of the best hitters in the Phillies lineup to seal that third game of the series. And no changeups, right? He did it without throwing a single changeup, which again is supposed to be his best pitch. He was blowing guys away with 97-mile-an-hour fastballs in that outing. So, with a little more perspective, in July and August, Iglesias has combined in those 2 months, Iglesias has a 0.00 ERA, 21 innings pitched, 23 strikeouts in those innings, 3 hits, and has allowed only 1 walk and 1 hit by pitch. So 21 innings pitched, only 5 base runners that he has allowed. But let's go even deeper. So if you go just in August, so going into last night's game against the Nationals, Iglesias had pitched 9 perfect innings. Perfect. No hits, no walks in 9 innings with 11 strikeouts going into the game last night. And last night, he hit a batter, so he did allow a runner, but in 2 innings, no hits once again. And again, that included the extra inning where you have the guy at second base. Guy didn't move from second. He gets a ground ball double play. The Braves get out of it and win the game. And he has been masterful not only across the board, but especially in these extra inning affairs Iglesias has come in. The Braves have won their last 3 extra inning games, and a ton of that has to do with Iglesias not allowing a run in the 10th inning. So in a season in which the Braves have struggled in so many different areas, they've been really good in extra innings. 9-4 in extra innings this year, and Iglesias has a ton to do with that. So again, he should get a lot of credit. All right, so again, the Braves have to play clean games. They need these starting 5 pitchers to really be dominant. And the last thing they need, timely hitting, right? Timely hitting. And this is the biggest piece that the Braves really have to improve or turn around. They just simply have not been very good at this. Honestly, they probably haven't been good at this for the last several seasons, but they've been particularly bad at it this year. Hitting with runners in scoring position, getting the sac fly when you need it, just get that tag on run. And to me, it's like a muscle that you haven't worked out in a long time, and you really focus on it and work it out for the first time in a long time, and it just hurts. And I think that's what's happening with this team and trying to relearn how to just cut down on a swing and hit a sac fly. And we saw Orlando Arcia do it really well last night, but right now it's super inconsistent with this team. Arcia did it well, but again, they had that second and third nobody out situation that they failed to get a runner in earlier in the game. So they really have to find a way to more consistently improve on adding those single tag-on runs early in the game as much as possible. Because, again, if this team scores 4 more runs, I feel really good about them moving forward. But they can't have those games where they get shut out or 1 run or 2 runs. They have to figure out a way to get these add-on runs. Okay, so let's think about their chances a little bit more. As we speak, the Braves are 2.5 games up on the Mets. They're a few games up on the Giants as well. I don't think the Cards or Cubs or Reds that are behind the Giants are very legitimate threats. All 3 of those teams are under 500 and have been even more inconsistent than the Braves, Mets, and Giants this year. The Braves are also 3.5 back on the Diamondbacks, and I think 3 back on the Padres. Those teams continue to play really well also, so it's going to be tough to catch those teams. Not that that's impossible, but as we speak, actually the Braves are now only 5 games back from the Phillies, as the Phillies really continue to struggle. So look, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that the Braves have a great chance to catch the Phillies, but there's still a lot of baseball to be played. And if the Phillies continue to play really poorly and the Braves can just do the little things well and keep winning some games, actually this could get interesting. Okay. So I think the Mets and the Phillies, here we are. We're in the National League East. I still think the Mets and Phillies are the teams to watch. Do a little scoreboard watching at this point in the season. The Mets have the 9th toughest schedule remaining in baseball, while the Braves have the 14th toughest schedule. So, the Braves are right in the middle of the pack. Mets have a pretty tough schedule the rest of the way. That's good news. And again, the Braves have a 2.5 game lead on the Mets as we speak. And again, if you're an optimist and you're looking more at the Phillies and you still think the Braves have a good shot at the National League East, the Phillies have the 13th toughest schedule. So them and the Braves basically a toss up in terms of how tough their schedules are. The Braves have 4 more games against the Phillies and 3-game series at home against the Mets to nearly close out the season. Kind of weird schedule and the way the season ends this year. The Braves play 3 at home against the Mets, and then they finish the season 3 against the Royals of all teams. They finished, and these are impactful games potentially, both for the Braves and the Royals, who are also hoping to secure a playoff spot. So that's how it kind of lays out for the Braves. The Mets have to finish after that 3-game series in Atlanta. They finish with a 3-game series against the Brewers, which is also a pretty tough matchup for them. The Brewers have been really good this year. The one thing I thought about with that is if the Brewers clinch before that point, I really hope they keep playing it out and don't lay down for those last 3 games against the Mets. So, the Mets started out pretty hot after the All-Star break. Obviously got really close and actually for a couple nights overtook the Braves in the wild card. That has obviously flipped back. But they've definitely cooled off some since that hot start in July. So none of the teams below the Braves are really playing all that well right now, or any better than the Braves. So that's another silver lining right now. All right, so let's pivot back to Riley just for a minute. So can Austin Riley be back for the playoffs? So we haven't really talked about his injury in specifics. Riley fractured his hand. He is supposed to. It is supposed to take 6 to 8 weeks for that injury to heal. Of course, everybody's a little different. Could take longer. Could be a little quicker. I doubt it's going to be much quicker than 6 weeks. But without knowing any details, we just don't know. I do take a small amount of encouragement from that it's a broken hand and not a broken wrist. Wrist injuries can cause a lot more issues with your swing, and it takes a long time to come back to full strength. You might remember when Freddie Freeman broke his wrist several years ago. His power didn't return for quite some time. Of course, with your hand, maybe you can't grip the bat as strongly, that sort of thing. So certainly it affects you. I think the biggest effect for Riley is just simply not hitting for 6 weeks and then trying to get back. So even if he gets back for the playoffs, is he going to be effective? And that holds true defensively as well. So it's going to be really tricky and really challenging for him to re-enter right as the playoffs are starting, or even during the playoffs, if that were to be a possibility, if the Braves kept going deeper into the playoffs. Obviously, that's a nice scenario to think about. But if I were betting on it, I don't think Riley comes back. But I'm certain he is as motivated as possible to get back and be a part of this Braves team in 2024. So, um, you know, considering he misses 6 weeks, it's certainly a big challenge. So the two most realistic scenarios to me for the 2024 Braves is one of these two things. Either scenario one, the Braves squeak into the playoffs with a more pesky style offense and a great pitching staff. And if that happens, the storyline for this team is that it's a team that's overcome one of the most injury-riddled seasons in recent history, to make the playoffs, and that honestly, whatever they do after that, from a sports psychology standpoint, the pressure's off. I mean, you're just happy to be in the playoffs and let's just go play. And a lot of times teams like that are a little more successful in the playoffs. We saw that with the Diamondbacks and Rangers last year. The Rangers made the playoffs I think on the last day last year, right? Diamondbacks similar. So sometimes that sort of thing really works in your favor. Scenario two, they missed the playoffs, right? This season full of injuries, just they can't overcome it. And we look at this season as a frustrating loss season full of injury. And it's not just injury, right? It's been underperformance as well. So where we are a far cry from the massive expectations that were on this team at the beginning of the season. Remember, everybody came in to spring training and it was World Series or bust. And it's this great team from, the 2023, we got bounced in the playoffs, but we're going to do better and we're going to win the World Series this year. I mean, it's a far cry from those lofty expectations to this point where, most analysts are saying they don't even think the Braves have enough to make the playoffs. I wonder psychologically how that impacts the team, and maybe a lot of the pressure they've been carrying most of this season is off of them now. And now it's just, let's just go play and see what happens. And the pressure's off. I hope that they're feeling more like that and they start playing looser, finally start playing looser, because they've just seemed to play tight all year. But ultimately on the field, the regulars who are still healthy have to play at a very high level the rest of the way. And Matt Olson, please awake. Please start doing. I mean, you were right in the middle of that order. In the number 4 hole, you've got to start hitting the ball consistently with some power. And, he shows up kind of randomly every now and then, but man, if the Braves ever could use a really hot stretch from Matt Olson, it's now. And then the replacements need to find some magic. And honestly, they have been. I mean, they've been playing pretty well. and Laureano and Whit Merrifield and Gio Urshela, okay, now's your chance to play in some really big games and some big moments. So hopefully they really embrace that, and the Braves can play good baseball, clean baseball, the rest of the way with some really good pitching. So that is the way that the Braves are going to make the playoffs. We will see if that happens, but we'll certainly be watching, guys. I really appreciate you tuning in to another episode of State of the Braves. I'll talk to you soon.